So hey guys, welcome to part two of my series of videos where I talk about films that I've watched over the course of my recovery. So where I last left off, I just got done talking about the Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas, which I think I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. So the next film that I watched during the process of my recovery for surgery was the film About Time. This is a film about a guy that um, figures out how to time travel. It's something that his dad learned a long time ago, and I think the grandfather before him learned how to time travel as well. And so basically, over the course of the film, he uses the time travel ability to kind of land the girl of his dreams, kind of perfect the situations of how he met people and how his wedding went to his wife and things like that, fixing the mistakes of his past and things like that, trying to prevent a car accident. I think the sister got in at one point and things like that. So it's really interesting. It's one of those movies where it kind of asks the question, if you could go back in time and change aspects of your life, what would you change? What are some sacrifices you'd be willing to make to have those changes made and things like that? So there's definitely a lot of life and death and scenarios that kind of are hypothetical in an interesting way that the film kind of asks of you as you're watching it and things like that. So for About Time, I thought it had a great story, a great use of time travel elements, great romance elements, great character writing. I definitely believed and really enjoyed seeing Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams as characters throughout the movie. It is one of those things where kind of things maybe start out a little bit awkward for them based on how they meet, but the journey is rewarding in the sense that you really like seeing them together. You like the characters. You like the way that they're written, things like that. For negatives of About Time, though, I thought some of the time loops was a little confusing. Some of the uses of erased moments didn't exactly work for me, and they also don't really work. Sometimes it's one of those things where it'll skip past something that's now erased in this guy's timeline, and they kind of don't go back to it, and they don't really explain how he's okay with his son looking like that or his daughter looking like that and things like that. Because there is certain parts of the story where if he does go back in time past a certain point, his kids are different, or there's something about the wife that's different, or there's something about his wedding that's now different, and things like that. But it's really interesting. It definitely asks a lot of interesting questions of if you could go back and change aspects of your life, what would you have changed, and things like that. Really interesting movie. I would probably even say it's possibly one of the best films I've seen in my recovery so far. I would give About Time a 9 out of 10. I really liked it. The next film I saw was on HBO Max, and that's Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. Unfortunately, a lot of critics really did not like this movie. Even the director of the first Space Jam has come out and said that he really did not like this movie, which is really sad because I love Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a fun sequel. I thought it honored the first film. I thought it went its own path without kind of repeating the first film and things like that. There's a lot of things to love about that new Space Jam movie. So I guess positives and negatives right off the bat. It's extremely fun to watch. There's a lot of ingenious pop culture references to Warner Brothers properties in it. Um, there's a lot of great nostalgia for fans of the first Space Jam and of the Looney Tunes characters. It gets a lot of opportunities to be creative with its ideas and its stories. There's just a lot of things to really like about the film. It's just really fun to watch. I've actually watched it twice ever since it did its 30-day run on HBO Max and things like that. It's a really fun movie. Um, the opening of the film I thought was a little bit too copied from the first one. They definitely liked the idea of Michael Jordan in his early years so much in that first movie that they tried to do the same with LeBron in this new Space Jam film. So as a result, you can kind of tell they copy and pasted that opening act a little bit too much. Some of the family drama elements I thought could have been stronger. Like there's scenes where they're kind of running around trying to figure out what LeBron is doing and how he got into this algae rhythm world and things like that. Um, I thought those aspects could have been better. Like they're there, but they could be stronger. You could tell they were trying to go for what the first Space Jam did with the Looney Tunes going into the real world and tracking down Michael Jordan's shorts and things like that. You can tell they were trying to do those same things with this new one. Um, some of the more I thought the story could have benefited from more like traditional basketball game too. There's just a lot of scenes where it's a video game basketball kind of a thing. So for those who were hoping for more of a traditional basketball game with Looney Tune elements like in that first Space Jam film, I think that's maybe why some of the reviews haven't been so strong on this. I think a lot of people were really turned off by the whole video game basketball thing in the third act. I really like the film though. There's tons of Warner Brothers characters that appear in this, like the Flintstones and the Jetsons and Scooby Doo and the Mask and things that are Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema properties show up here, and it's definitely a lot of fun to watch. You'll definitely see all these characters that show up in the basketball game at the end that you'll recognize from certain Warner Brothers movies and things like that. They definitely have a lot of fun with the Looney Tunes. And I'll say this too, I like that this film had both traditional hand drawn elements and like realistic looking CGI when the Looney Tunes kind of become real world characters at one point. It's definitely something in film I hope to see come back more, because I remember watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit again for like the 5 billionth time earlier this year, and was thinking to myself just how fun it is to see hand drawn animation and live action working together. And I do like that this film kind of tried to bring that back a little bit. So it's cool to see that Space Jam 2 tried to bring that element back. And I just had a ton of fun watching this movie, and I can't wait to own the Blu-ray for this film. So Space Jam 2, A New Legacy, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I really, really like this movie. Another film I got to see during my recovery was a film called Election from Alexander Payne. This film is about Matthew Broderick as this teacher of the school, and there's a student in the school that he really doesn't like. She always runs for class president. She's kind of always showing off her A-plus grades in classes and things like that. There was a whole thing with her sleeping around with one of the teachers who has since been fired and things like that. But it's a really funny movie. There's just a lot of things about this girl that crawls under this teacher's skin throughout the movie. There's a lot of things going on with his wife and one of the friends of the wife that kind of complicate things in his own life, and they kind of happen while this class president election is going on that he doesn't like being involved with in the school year and things like that. It's a really funny movie. I loved the film Sideways from Alexander Payne, so it was cool to kind of finally track down a film of his that I know a lot of people really like from him from 1999. So Election I thought was really funny. It was uniquely filmed. There's just a lot of scenes where you're seeing like his love life at home and how his hate for this student kind of shows up in his personal life sometimes and things like that. There's also a lot of like real life high school scenarios that happen in this film that you could see happening in the real world somewhere. And even though it's a movie, there's just certain things that you could see happening in the real world, like this Chris Klein character trying to be the class president opponent and things like that. And it had a very unique visual style. There's just a lot of scenes where you see a lot of perspectives from the characters. I want to say there's basically four lead characters in the film, and you kind of see their perspective of how the class president election thing kind of affected their life at the time and things like that. Very unique visual style. There's a lot of scenes where Matthew Broderick's character gets in trouble, and you kind of see a lot of visualizations of things that were going on at the time while all this trouble was happening in his life. Really fun movie, very effectively filmed, very uniquely filmed from Alexander Payne, I feel. One negative of the film I had was there's a theme where Matthew Broderick's character is trying to make a point to Reese Witherspoon's character that you can't always win in life. There's something that kind of happens in the third act. I feel that kind of goes against that a little bit. It gets a little bit abandoned towards the end. Yeah, there's a scene that you definitely glad that happens with him kind of getting his revenge on this girl a little bit. It's a 5-second, I'm going to ruin your life kind of thing, but at the same time, that theme of you can't always win in life, I think, is very effective, and I think there's a lot of scenes where that theme could have been brought home a little bit more. But overall, I'm going to give Election a 9 out of 10. Very effective film, very funny, definitely very different for an Alexander Payne film, which I really liked about it. Another film I got to see was another Alexander Payne film, and that's the film About Schmidt. I think this film came out in the early 2000s. I want to say he did this one before Sideways, I want to say. And this film was about Jack Nicholson's character kind of retiring from this business job, and he finds out about his daughter marrying this waterbed salesman. and he really kind of smells trouble with it right away. There's a lot of legal things that this guy has gotten involved with, both in finances and his own life and things like that, and things that his family hasn't been too happy with him about. And so Jack Nicholson at one point takes this road trip with this RV that him and his wife got before the wife passed away. And it's kind of about him trying to convince the daughter not to marry the guy, and kind of about um, like what to do to make sure that you don't feel so lonely when your life and everything gets kind of stripped away from you and things like that. So, for my positives and negatives for About Schmidt, there's a lot of funny moments in the film. It definitely has that Alexander Payne live action cartoon kind of a feel. So, this is the same director as Election, so it's another film of his that I got to see in my recovery. Um, and it shows the importance of being around those that you love and care about, even if they're doing things that you don't exactly always agree with. It has an interesting narrative. There's always this segment throughout the movie of Schmidt talking to this little boy through these letters that he does donations for. And it's basically the film's opportunity for us to get to know Schmidt a little bit more and kind of see his perspective of what he wasn't happy about with his marriage and things like that. But for my negatives of About Schmidt, though, there's just a lot of scenes in this film that don't feel eventful enough. It's basically just Schmidt letting us know that he's not happy about the daughter marrying this guy, and there's just a lot of moments in the film where it's just kind of Schmidt being unhappy with things and things like that. So it's not the most eventful Alexander Payne film out there. There's definitely a lot of rewards to watching this film, I think. I think it's definitely a uniquely made movie. But like I said, I thought it could have been a more eventful. I thought more work could have been done with the side characters just because Schmidt does get a lot of screen time in this movie. I also thought this film could have done better as like an ensemble piece. There's just a lot of scenes with Schmidt being like, "Oh, I don't like this," or "I'm unhappy about this," or "I don't like this." Um, and I thought there's just certain opportunities, like maybe getting the daughter's perspective or getting this guy's perspective, getting the parents of the groom to be's perspective, and things like that. But overall, I would give About Schmidt an 8.5 out of 10. Really like the film. It's not quite as good as Election or Sideways when it comes to Alexander Payne films, but it's still a very enjoyable film. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. So I will see you guys back here for what's going to be part 3 of this video segment. This is a pretty long series of videos so far, but I did watch a lot of films over the course of my recovery. So I'll see you guys back here for part 3 of films that I've watched during my recovery.